found, resonance with these entrepreneurs, people who were different from the crowd, but because of their imagination and the fact that they were able to take risks and stand up for themselves and be bold, they went and created these amazing things. So on one walk home from work, excuse my French, but I said, fuck it, I'm going to go all in. So I handed in my notice, and then I started building my first marketing agency. And, fast forward 6 years, I built 3 marketing agencies. 2 of them had quite a lot of success. We scaled them to over 7 figures. I was out in the US and, I've been all over the world, worked with some incredible brands, spent about $100 million on paid advertising. So I've learned a few things along the way, but going in the right direction. We'd hit this big goal at the last agency I was a part of, I was the CEO of. And, I was partnered up with the woman that I'd been looking for a long time. The family was all coming together. Basically, in the matter of a few weeks, I went from on top of the world to suicidal thoughts. So basically, that person betrayed me, and I lost the person that believed in me most. So I basically got to the point where I was on my balcony in Austin 6 months ago, and I nearly committed suicide. And in that dark moment, I said to myself, James, if I'm not going to continue for me, I'm going to do this for everyone else who deserves a second chance. So basically, I needed a big goal to get myself, to climb off the canvas of death, so to speak. So I started a newsletter called David to Goliath. And the reason I called it David to Goliath was because David had the belief passed on to him to beat the mighty Goliath. And I needed that belief to conquer my demons, because in today's world, obviously, as we know, depression is higher than it's ever been before. Suicide rates are through the roof. But I'm here to stand up and tell people, look, I'm struggling, but I'm not going to sit around feeling sorry for myself. I'm going to take action, and I'm going to share the journey with you. So the goal was pretty big that I set myself, 100,000 subscribers on a newsletter in 1 calendar year. I can get onto strategically why I wanted to build a newsletter. But basically to date, in the first 18, 19 weeks, we've hit 26,000 subscribers. So we're on track to hit the big 100K goal. And I'm basically rebuilding my life from scratch, James. So it's a hard struggle every single day. I've had to literally rewire my entire identity. And I'll tell you now, I think the reason my story is different to most is I'm still in the pain. I'm still definitely not on the other side of it. It's hard to let go. It's hard to face your demons. But if you can look at that man in the mirror and say that you're going to face those problems head on, I think that's where life starts getting exciting. And, you really find out who you truly are. Because as Mike Tyson said, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. And it looks like I've been punched in the face right now. But let me tell you, I definitely got a big right hook to the face, and life threw a curveball at me. And now I'm recovering, and, I'm building again.
So that is an incredible story. And I just want to start right at the beginning and really start with the basics. Sure. So sales and marketing, so tell us what is marketing. Let's start with what that actually is. So if you can tell us what that is, please.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that you've come across Alex Hormozy recently. He wrote some really good books. I think it's just the art of getting known. I think obviously you've got direct marketing, which is, more direct response advertising, where you're trying to get money straight away. Yeah. Then you've obviously got branding, which is creating associations of certain things, which is a bit more of a long-term strategy. So I think it really depends on where your business is right now. The way I clarify between marketing and sales is marketing is everything that happens prior to getting on a call with someone. And then sales is everything once you've got on a call to actually, getting the transaction closed and starting working with someone.
Yeah, I mean, that is so true, actually. And would you say that in order to build wealth, we really need to be good at building businesses and good at selling? Would you say that was correct?
I'd say in business, there's 2 people, really. You've usually got the person who's great at building products, and you've got the person who sells the product to the world. So I think it's not always black and white. Because there's a lot of, if you look at Steve Wozniak at Apple, you wouldn't exactly say he was a great salesperson, but he was great at building products. And he obviously partnered up with Steve Jobs, who was one of the best storytellers we've ever seen. So I think if you're not good at those skill sets, there's still a way forward, but you'd need to partner up with someone who is. But yeah, if you want to go out there and, make a name for yourself, I think it's something we don't get taught in schools, right? And it's a skill set that the market deems very valuable, learning how to articulate your thoughts. And really, sales is a transfer of enthusiasm, right? But the thing is we never get taught how to do this. And really, the way you get taught is by actually taking action and getting rejected and then coming back and obviously surrounding yourselves some people who have been there and done it, and then figuring it out for yourself. But yeah, I think it's an incredibly valuable skill set. And if you look to a lot of the successful people, a lot of them had their start in sales, and they definitely didn't learn that in classrooms, James.
It's really interesting you should say that, because obviously my background is DPD, so parcel deliveries. And I remember when I had my first depot, it was all about operations, which is I'm very good at. I'm very good at operations. I'm very good at people, getting the best out of people. But I really hadn't really experienced sales. And then DPD brought this sort of new world of sales into it, where they're expecting you to do sales and operations. And the way that I looked at it was, I looked at the top of DPD, and you had two people that ran it. So you had the CEO, who was the salesman, and then you had the other guy, the director of operations. And that's when I realized that, it's very difficult to be good at both of those things. So I was very lucky at the time. The universe, brought someone into my life that just made a big difference and was an incredible salesperson. So when we combined with sales and operations, we really did take off. So I think that's really important, that we understand our unique ability as quickly as we can and become a master of that. So you got, your sales and marketing. Are you a little bit like me, where that was the thing you did, but really your skill set was bringing the best out of people? Do you think that was really?
Yeah, I'd say so. I'd say that is my passion in life sending out cold emails. Probably not. To get your start in life, you've got to make a name for yourself. And I think a lot of people talk about finding your passion, and they think that you can just, find that magically. I don't really agree with that. I think you've got to take risks and you've got to take action. And if I look at a lot of the jobs that I did when I was younger, whether I was collecting glasses on the floors of Wetherspoons at 4 a.m. in the morning, or packing, bags at a factory in a warehouse, I didn't enjoy those jobs, but they taught me, one, a lot about work ethic, and two, they also taught me what I didn't want to do in life. And I think that, experience is life's best teacher. So I think you've got to do those things sometimes to really understand what it takes, and also understand what you don't want to enjoy. And then naturally, if you listen to your intuition, you will figure out what you do want to enjoy. For me, I think if I'm doing everything myself, that is me not working to my full potential. There's always this analogy I give, James, which is quite interesting, which is, let's imagine that someone's building a rocket, Elon Musk going to Mars. Who is the most important person? Is it the 10 guys or girls who are the most intelligent rocket scientists in the world? They're the only people who know how to build this rocket. Or is it the leader who gets 25% more out of each individual one of them? Well, it's actually a trick question, because the real answer is you need both. And that's why teams win. And if we look back through human evolution, James, it's actually always been tribes. So I kind of reject this notion about solopreneurship. I don't buy into it, because I think that as humans, we can't be good at everything. And the reason why we're all wired differently is because if you look back, like I said, at human evolution, everyone had their role in the tribe. Some people were hunting, getting the food. Some people were managing the team. Some people were caring. Some people were organizing, do the operations. Obviously slightly different in the cave times, but it's still in our nature. It's in our human biology. And I think you need to find out which role you play, and obviously go out there and build your own tribe. And that's how you have the success. And as you rightly put, for me, that is definitely leadership. I love working with people. But I think you've got to understand, if you're not in that role, you've got to get someone who does love that, and you'll figure it out.
Yeah, and as we're both coaches, I imagine, because we're both very good at getting the best out of people. One of the biggest words for me is collaboration. You know, you can set goals and have vision boards. You can have this amazing your future self, but really, unless you've got the right team of people around you that share the same passion, you're going to struggle. It's really difficult to become, really good at anything on your own. So. And I'll give you an example of that, and I'm sure you've done the same. When I was running my depot, we would have a team they were the super team. So they were a team of people that were really good at CRM, they were good at the operations, good at the day-to-day dealing with the customers, and they were called a super team for a reason. Is that we never blamed each other. We were always a unit, and we had a strong belief in each other, and we had trust in each other. Is that something that you have done throughout your businesses?
Yeah, 100%. I think the environment of safety is something that's really important. Actually, Jeff Bezos just did a podcast recently with Lex Friedman. He said something that was really interesting. On his meetings, because obviously, he's the big CEO, or other leaders in his organization, he actually speaks last. And why does he do that? Well, the thing is, if the person who's at the top of the hierarchy speaks first, the problem is then people who are lower down the hierarchy will then not want to challenge that person's perspective. So it's not creating an environment of safety where people can be transparent and share their thoughts. And I think creating a culture where everyone understands, no matter where they are in the organization, if they got started yesterday or they got started 10 years ago, that everyone has a voice. And no person is ever bigger than the team. And we look at, some of the big sporting teams, the people who had the best environments, when other people challenge that narrative, if we look at, we were talking about before we start the podcast at Sir Alex Ferguson, when someone challenged the narrative that one person is never bigger than the team, you got rid of those people, no matter how important they were. And, a lot of people said to the detriment of their success. But if you look at over the course, the longevity of his management career, I think you can see why he was successful, because he always controlled the fact that it's an environment of safety. It's an environment where everyone, has a voice and everyone can collaborate and see why they're important to the organization. I think this is something that's lacking in a lot of businesses, especially startups.
I totally agree with that, actually. In fact, I think a modern business needs to stop just interviewing people for roles. They should be looking at more of a spiritual connection. I'm just going to use that word because it brings a bit more passion, a bit more why I'm doing it, a bit more, because not everybody goes to work just to earn money. Some people want to go to work to be part of something that gives them a buzz, gives them a lift of energy. So let's get back to so sales and marketing is the thing that you're doing, but really inside of that, your passion is to bring the best out of people. What did you do in the early days? When did you start to realize that you had a skill for getting the best out of people?
Yeah, well, like I talked to you in that real estate agency, we were speaking about Pride starting. So context, we were helping realtors find home buyers through Facebook advertising. So we're a lead generation company. And we figured out that the realtors weren't calling the leads that we sent to them. So we had to build a sales team that would go and call these leads on their behalf and qualify them and then transfer the ones to them that were qualified. So we didn't have the money and resources, because we were a startup, to train an American sales team because they were American realtors. So what I did instead is I hired a team out in the Philippines, and I trained all these people up, bearing in mind they were working for $1-2 an hour. And I trained them up with understanding how to use tonality, how to understand how to communicate passion in their voice, and how to handle objections on calls, to be the one call that people would remember in their day. And even though everyone told me that it wasn't possible for people in the Philippines who had no education to outcompete American sales teams, I did it. And it took some time, it took a lot of work. But what I started to realize is, for these people in the Philippines, no one had ever told them that it could achieve anything in life. Yeah. When I started saying to them, that you can, if you follow the process, you work hard, you believe in yourself. And my favorite quote, bar none, James, is by Winston Churchill. One man, or I should say woman, with conviction will overwhelm 100 who have only opinions. And the way you get that conviction and self-belief is by believing in yourself and taking actions in line with a new identity, which gives you case studies that you are that person. And that's what I did. You know, I got them on calls and I showed them through the proof, the undeniable proof that they could do it. And lo and behold, we outcompeted the American sales teams. And, you know, our cost of labor was obviously a lot cheaper, even though they were getting paid very well for the Philippines. And we created an amazing team culture. And it showed me that my best strength is actually understanding people and understanding how to get the most out of them and helping them understand that they can achieve more in life, especially because a lot of these people have never been told that before.
Okay, I mean, I totally agree with that. So for, obviously, the show is about inspiring entrepreneurs. So when we're, recruiting new staff, is there a different process now? Do you approach that differently? Can you give us some advice on how you would do your recruitment these days?
Yeah, I focus more on principles instead of skills because I mean, it really depends, right? It depends where you're at in your organization. I think obviously if you've just got a load of investment and you need to run really fast, I think there is a time and place for hiring people with experience. Yeah. But if you've got the time and you're more, limited on resources, think if we go to the core fundamentals, I hire on principles because, as Churchill again said, another quote from him, judge your relationships by how they show up in bad weather. I don't really want to know when the tide is riding high, how great everyone is when everything's going good. I want to know what happens when everything goes bad, when the storms come in. And I want to see the adversity that people have handled, how they handle rejection, giving me examples of obviously how they have dealt with those situations and the solutions that they problem solved in real time. Because I think if you find dynamic problem solvers, they can transition those skill sets to different industries. And I think it's all about proactivity. That's what I look for. Everyone can look amazing in an interview, but the reality is most people are there for a paycheck and they're lazy. And I think the people who are curious, if we look at, I think it was Walter Isaacson did all the biographies on Steve Jobs, Jeff Bezos, Leonardo da Vinci. And he said the one thing that connects all these great people is they kept their childlike curiosity into their adulthood days. And I think that's the big thing I look for. It's not necessarily what questions am I asking, it's what questions are they asking me? Did they show up to the call prepared? Do they understand what I'm doing in the business? Are they giving me solutions on the interview? Are they asking me deep questions, not the shallow ones, the ones that are really deep to understand how they could impact the company? And if you find that proactiveness and you find people who are curious and passionate to understand what's going on, to see how their role could fit into your organization, I think that is the hallmark of someone who could go on to become exceptional.
Absolutely right. And do you find that sometimes when you've taken staff on that actually they would be better in a slightly different role? Sometimes you get this transition as well. Is that something you've come across?
Yes, I think definitely. I think obviously there's always an evolution, right? And I think it's about being honest and setting realistic expectations. And the other thing is let's just be honest about it. Some people just don't fit. They don't map up. They don't do the work. I always say, James, judge people by their actions, not their words. Like I said, everyone can look great in an interview, but the reality is a lot of people don't live up to that hype. And I think, again, if we talk about the culture, to protect it, you need to get rid of the rotten apples very fast. And sometimes it just doesn't work out. So yeah, sometimes there can be an evolution and you see different talents within people, but I think also sometimes it doesn't work out. And I think a lot of founders early on, they have a real issue with saying no, and they don't understand that what they're saying yes to is all the other people in their organization because they're protecting the team culture. And as a leader, that's the most important thing because it's all about standards.
Yeah. So I mean, it's fascinating. So you've built the business, you've got lots and lots of staff. in the right places. The next thing that can happen, and it's happened to me, is that people leave. How do you deal with, you know, good staff wanting to leave? I know how I did it. Just wondered how you dealt with it. And it would be something like coming to work on a Monday morning and there'd be an envelope on your desk.
Yeah.
And you just know that someone wants to move on. And because it's your team, they're going to be an important person in your networks. How did you deal with that?
Yeah, I think at the start I took it very personally and I didn't take it well. And it was an evolution I had to go through as a leader. But I think if you look at the indicators of a positive business and environment, if someone has come into your business, they've obviously got to a different level. And then someone outside, maybe a bigger organization, is looking to recruit that person. What's that telling you? It's telling you that you're going in the right direction. And as you know, you would say, never burn any bridges. You don't know, like you said, in your network, when that person's going to come back into your life. So I think you have to be respectful and you have to wish them all the best. And you have to understand that if you've done it once, you can do it again. And sometimes that's hard in business, but it's a thing in life where those people have their own set of goals. You know, this is your organization, you've got goals, but they've got their own set of goals as well. So you have to understand and be willing to let go, but never burn any bridges, set them on their way and take it, you know, well, obviously I'm a man, but take it as a man, so to speak, and just be respectful, because I think burning bridges is a surefire way to, like, karma's real, you know, like that thing will come back to bite you back in the ass and you don't know when that's going to come round. So I think if you have that narrow mindset and you're not abundantly thinking that if I've done it once, I can do it again. And probably because I've done it once now, I've got even more experience. So the next person who comes through, you know, as they say, when one door closes, another one opens. How do you know that when that person's left, the next person that comes in isn't going to be even better than that person?
That's so true.
All the experience you've got. And then when that person goes on to become an incredible leader themselves in a different organization, if you're nice to them, you're kind and you respect them and you set them on the way and keep that door open, they will probably help you in a different way. And they will always look back at their experience with you as a positive one. And I think long term, that's extremely important for relationship building.
Amazing answer. I was exactly, for me, it was always two things. So I would get the ump for about 5 seconds and then I would exactly. Oh, you're back again. Sorry, I think I had a technical issue there. So those are the two things. I would always encourage my staff to, you know, to be a better version of themselves. And if that means they want to go on and do bigger things, that's fantastic, because I was part of that. So I would give them time off to go to interviews.
Looks like I'm the host now. Hopefully James joins back in a second.
I'm back in. I don't know what happened there. Hi, Nigel. Sorry about that.
I was going to say if I needed to entertain the audience for a few minutes.
You'd be fine. Yeah, so that was the two things, was encourage them to move on. That's absolutely fine. And I always saw it as an opportunity to find someone that's better. It doesn't matter who that is in the organization that leaves. You should always have this mindset that this is your opportunity to actually get someone in that's even better than that person that's leaving. And the last thing I would say is more often than not, and you had this, the grass isn't greener. That staff member reconnects, wants to come back, and then you've got the most loyal person you could ever imagine working in your business. So it's really, really good for entrepreneurs to understand that when people hand their notice in, there's actually lots of wins that can come from that. So I just wanted to ask the audience if there's any questions that they want to ask Nigel. So basically, we're at a point where you're starting to grow your business. You're getting the best out of people. You're recruiting the right people. So for the entrepreneurs, how do we deal with scaling the business then? How do we start to grow this business, Nigel?
Well, it depends on what stage you're at, because I think for me, I mean, obviously now I'm building this newsletter, this media company. I'm kind of back to square one. So I've got some help, but so just as a caveat, what I'm doing in terms of, to generate revenue is I'm actually doing some coaching and mentoring with some marketing agencies, because obviously that was my field of expertise. So when I stepped down as CEO, a lot of agencies, got in touch to ask me if I could help them. So what I did is, starting in April, is I've been mentoring 15 agencies in kind of a group environment. And I've been doing trainings with them, one-to-one calls. And through that, I'm then going to reinvest that revenue to hiring certain team members in certain areas. So it really depends where you're at, because obviously at the start, it sounds great to go and hire like a high performance team. But the reality is, people who are really good, they know their worth. So they're obviously going to charge quite a lot of money. So I think it goes through a process. At the start, you need to know how to generate revenue, right? Whether that's through marketing, whether that's through sales. And obviously you've got to have a product and service you can sell to the market. And it all comes down to what problems can you solve. For me, I know the agency game inside out. So I know how I can scale these guys from 10 to 50K a month to 100K a month. And I can directly solve their problems. But that's because obviously I spent 6 years doing it. So I think it really depends where you're at. So I don't know if anyone wants to give me an example, and I can provide some more tailored advice. But really, you need to understand what are you doing each day, which is, lower leverage activities, because it's all about leverage. And what leverage is, for people who don't know, it's getting more output from every input of time. So what are the things that aren't high leverage? And how can you start delegating and deleting those things? And yes, at the start, you can use people overseas. We now live in a global marketplace. So you can hire people in these countries like the Philippines, like South America. And if you've got good processes, which is, again, a problem which a lot of people stumble across, like we said, James, at the start, you hire these people, they don't understand your processes. That's not their responsibility. That's your responsibility. You have to have good standard operating procedures, and you have to understand how to take things down to the most simplest level, so you can then delegate them efficiently. And it could be little things like sorting out your email inbox or your calendar management, or booking, times in with people that you need to follow up with in the sales process. And you can start delegating these things one by one until you get to a point where you've got enough revenue to bring in people who can manage higher leverage activities, for example, doing your sales calls for you.
Yeah, it's so cool. Right, we've got a couple of questions coming on here. So Renuka, good morning. She's asking, when you don't have money to employ people, would you start with a commission-based employment or a commission-based sort of relationship?
It depends what the role is. I think for commission, you need to know your KPIs. So the reason why most people do commission in sales is it's very black and white. Do you bring X amount of revenue into the business? Do you set a certain amount of meetings or calls? And then obviously it's pretty black and white if they do that. So then obviously you can incentivize, if they hit X amount of calls, if they hit their quota, they can get paid a certain commission. When you start looking at things like operations, though, the KPIs become a little bit more muddy. So my question back to you is, do you know the KPIs of your business? And if you look at things in operations, you're looking at things that more like, you know, lifetime value of your customers, cash flow, profit margins. If you don't know these things, my advice would be first understand your numbers, because if you don't understand your numbers, no one else is. But that's why at the start, it's probably easier to hire on commission basis for sales. By the way, I know Mitko's watching, so shout out to you, my friend. He actually got me connected to get on this podcast in the first place. He's a great person.
He is actually. Thank you, Mitko, for that. So it's almost like, so if we think about operations is more about saving money, whereas I suppose sales is about getting revenue in. So you're absolutely right. KPIs for operators, they want to know, it's a different environment, isn't it? So, and sales, I think if I was a salesman, if I was commission based, then you really have to get on with it and get selling. If there was a salary and then commission, do you think that would make a difference to someone's work day?
Yeah, I think if people are operating from a place of scarcity, it can be an issue. So I think it depends on the track record and the current financial situation. But if we look at the I'm going off on a bit of a tangent here, but if we look at the Maslow hierarchy of needs, firstly, you've got to take care of your base instincts, food, shelter, like the survival instincts of humans. And if we can't take care of these things, you're not going to be operating from a place where you can make good quality decisions. So if the person you're working with doesn't have enough money to cover rent and food, probably a base salary is going to be a good idea. But if they're in a position where they've got those stuff taken care of, and they have maybe a big ego because they know they're really good at sales and they can see the upside of what they can bring to the table, then maybe you can do commission only. So I think it really depends on the situation of the person.
That's exactly what I would used to do. I'd work out, what that person's financial needs are, and then work out something that's going to bring the best out of them. It's a really, really good answer. So we've got another question here from Mitko. So morning, Mitko. What's the most common issue for an average agency you are coaching, Nigel?
Self-belief. So in terms of like actual business things, a lot of it is they don't charge enough. They don't know how to charge enough. If you're making a company a certain amount of revenue, you need to know your numbers inside out so you can know how much value you're delivering. And obviously, you can see the amount of revenue you're bringing in that's extra, which you wouldn't already or ordinarily have. Get my words out right. It's early on a Sunday morning, James, and coffee. But essentially understanding the value provided and pricing in line with that value instead of just copying what competitors are doing in the marketplace. But even if you understand that, charging 3 times the amount is hard for some people, and it's all in the mind. So actually, I'll give you an example. There was this guy called Eugenio, 23 years old, living out in Madrid. And before working with me, he did 30 sales calls in a row and got rejected on every single one of them. And he was at the point, he was doing about 10,000-ish a month, and he thought about giving up. And we worked on his sales. We worked on how he can increase his pricing. But the most important thing I said to him, because he said to me, he thinks he's got a lead problem. And I was like, you haven't got a lead problem. You've got a mindset problem. And he really didn't believe in himself. So he didn't believe that his service was valuable to that client. And I could see that by how he was acting on calls. So we did a lot of work in the last few weeks on his sales process and really his mindset. And in the last, I think it's 2 weeks, he's signed 4 clients. He's doubled the size of his agency, and he's on track to hit 30K a month by the end of Q2. So a testament to what's possible. But I think a lot of it is self-belief.
I totally agree with that. And worthiness. What am I individually worth? Mindset is obviously whenever you look at any business, anything in life, really, the mindset is such a big part of that, isn't it? It's that inner belief, that knowing that you can achieve anything, that impossible sort of future that we look at our futures, and if we don't imagine them big enough, that's the first issue. But if they seem impossible, then that's how they should be, because they need to be like that. So I think that's really important, that people believe in themselves and have self-worth. Got another question.
And the other thing is, if you don't ask, you don't get in life. You've got to start accepting this. No one is going to believe in you for you. No one is going to increase the prices of your company for you. So that's on you to do. And I think this was a harsh realization I had in my life, James. You know, when I came into Alpha Inbound, we were charging $1,500 a month, the last agency I was a part of. By the time I left, we were charging $10,000 a month minimum. But the only way to go through that process was by me asking for more money and obviously delivering in line with that value to keep up our reputation and keep the clients. But really, the advice is you don't ask, you don't get in life. And you've got to ask because no one's going to do it for you.
So true. My best friend is sadly no longer with us. He would always say to me, if you don't ask, you don't get. It's just so true, that is. We've got another question from Nyama. Good morning, Nyama. Have you got any tips? Okay, so what she's saying is that, you know, have you got any tips if you're just starting out in your business? Would you get staff members, physical staff members, or would you outsource it to virtual assistants? Or does that depend on?
I mean, I'd need to know a little bit more about what the kind of business you're running and what the activities are you need to do to generate revenue. So maybe you could provide a bit more context. But blanket advice is, you look at the activities which are, you know, higher leverage, which at the start is obviously usually making sales, keeping long-term relationships and making sure, you know, your finances are in place. And if you can't do all those activities yourself, then you can start looking to get support. But outside of those high leverage activities, are there things which are taking up your time, which aren't in line with those high leverage activities, such as, you know, calendar management, managing inboxes, you know, setting up meetings, doing onboarding processes? Do you even have processes around these things so you could delegate them? So first of all, I'd see, you know, actually delegating those processes. You've got to have the processes in place first. And then can you afford it in line with your profit margins? So can someone in the Philippines might be $3, $5 an hour. Do you have that within your margin to be able to delegate? If the answer is yes, then yes, go and start looking for help, put out some job descriptions, try and hire some people. But it really comes down to understanding the activities you need to do. And it's really input output. You know, if I need to close a certain amount of sales, do you know how many activities you need to do, whether it's sending cold emails, doing a certain amount of content each day to get the required number of sales calls you need, to close the amount of deals you need to hit your targets? You know, you need to have a roadmap.
I totally agree with that. It's so true. You know, it's down to us as entrepreneurs to understand that there are people out there that can do it better than us, but they need to see the process. We need to create the process, download what's in our heads into a simply explained document or process, and then you can delegate that to them. So I just want to get back to you personally in the journey that you've on. So you clearly have a skill set to bring the best out of people, and you're building this big brand. I just want to touch on this high point that you had, if you don't mind, of where, you know, the world's at your feet, and then just take us through that bit when it crumbled a little bit, because we've all had personal trauma as entrepreneurs. I mean, you know, I've had it, but this is about you. So if you could just tell us where you were when it was really high and what happened to knock you off that.
Yeah, sure. So look, I didn't have really many people who truly believed in me. And I was always ostracized from society. So I found one person who actually gave me the self-belief, you know, the self-belief to go and talk on stages in front of hundreds of people, the self-belief to build a following on LinkedIn, and the self-belief to run like big teams. And just having that rock, that foundation of, like I said from Winston Churchill, judge your relationships by how they show up in bad weather. I just found that one person who just gave me everything, the support, the foundation that I needed in life. And then that was the same person who betrayed me. So that was, I don't really want to get into the personal side of it, but there was a kid involved as well who I had a really deep relationship with. And then they just cut me off overnight. So it's obviously a two-sided affair. But the thing is it was just having that rock foundation just shattered into 1,000 pieces.
Yeah.
I had to believe in myself, James, for the first time in my life. And that's why I called it David to Goliath, because it was, now I've got to believe in me, and I want to transfer that self-belief to other people. But it was hard. I'm still struggling now. It's hard to muster up the courage. And if you're relying on that one person and you don't have them anymore, that took a big hit on my ego, and I questioned everything about me. And in the process, like we said, I don't know what it's like for a woman because I'm a man, but as a man, really, one of the most important things we want in life is respect. But I lost respect for myself. I pleaded to have that person back, and I got desperate, and I lost self-respect for myself. When I looked in the mirror, I wasn't happy with the reflection. I'm still not happy with the reflection, but I've said to myself now that no one's going to do this for me. And I've got to build that respect up. It's kind of like building a cathedral, but you build it one brick, one day at a time. And it's a slow, arduous, painful process, but you can change it. And I've seen other people that have changed it, and I'm documenting the journey for everyone else. So hardest 6-12 months of my life. But, if I did commit suicide, that would have been the easy way out, because I was so afraid of facing that man in the mirror, facing myself, and trying to figure my way out of that situation. But it's taught me so much about life, James, and I'm grateful for the experience.
I totally agree. And I love the word that you use there. One of my favorite words is courage. Confidence is, I know what I'm doing, I'm comfortable. It is a word, but courage is the word. Getting outside of our comfort zones, stretching ourselves, making us feel uncomfortable, believing in ourselves, having an amazing imagination. There's such key things. So I think that, and I'm sure that people would have looked at you and thought, oh, Nigel's doing great. It's all easy for him. He's a money magnet. But we both know that as entrepreneurs, we've pretty much given everybody else ourselves and left very, very little for ourselves. So behind the scenes, being an entrepreneur is not easy. It can be quite lonely. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think social media has kind of messed up the expectations of, what it really truly takes. Because obviously, if you look at lottery tickets, why do people buy lottery tickets? It's because there's one winner, right? But you don't, all the people who lost, you don't see those case studies, right? So, if we actually look at the cold hard facts, this might be a bit of a wake-up call for some people, but the average age of a successful startup founder in a fast-growing business is 54. That's the facts. So you don't see that on social media, though. You see all these kids making millions of dollars, but that's just not the reality of how the world works. Point is, experience matters. And for most people, it's going to take a long time. But the problem is that working hard, facing setbacks and challenges for a decade isn't the sexiest of sales pitches. But that's the truth. That's usually, if you want to go in with a real expectation, it's do work at it for 10 years. And if you surround yourself with the right people, if you learn from your mistakes, if you set your ego to one side, and obviously you put in the work, if you do that for 10 years, I would be very, very surprised if you don't see success. But the problem is most people want it in 90 days. And obviously, a lot of these social media people have kind of messed up that expectation, and they use those vulnerabilities against people to make them believe in things that aren't possible. But the reality is, like I said, if you go in with the right expectation, it's going to take 10 years. I'm 6 years into this journey. And you'll probably see success before that. But, you'll underestimate, I think it was Bill Gates that said what you can do in 1 year, but you'll underestimate what you can do in 10 years. So just set the right expectations and understand that this journey you're going to go on, it's worth it, because you're not going to have to answer to a boss anymore that you hate. You're going to be able to create financial freedom to do whatever you want in life. It's just going to be 10 times harder, probably 100 times harder than you initially expected. but it's going to be worth it, because when you're 65 years old, when you're 85 years old, and you're on your deathbed, looking back at your life, you can say, damn, I lived, I made it happen. I made the sacrifices I needed to create the life that I want. And most importantly, whatever pain you're experiencing right now, it pales in comparison to that last moment of regret if you don't take a risk and you don't roll the dice on your dreams.
I totally agree. Such a lovely thought there. And you know, and just getting back to the lottery win, I would say that you've already won the lottery. You're alive, you're breathing, you're part of this amazing universe. That is the lottery win. So, and again, you know, being the best version of ourselves, stretching ourselves, taking risks. That's really what entrepreneurs do. They're just, you know, they don't know why they do stuff. And sometimes it can be seen to be a bit reckless to others, but they've just got this driving force. They just want to be a better version of themselves.
Crazy until genius.
just an amazing story. I mean, I could talk to you, you know, all day on this, and perhaps we'll have you back on the show and talk about other bits and pieces. I just want to say thank you so much for today. It's been an amazing show. You're an amazing person. You're an inspiration to us all. You know, from the David to the Goliath, from the bottom to the top. And I think it's really important that we connect with people like you and be around people like you and use that inspiration. So thank you so much for coming on the show, Nigel. Amazing story. And I hope that everybody got something from that. And we'll see you all next week, and have a fantastic time. Thank you so much for listening, for watching. Have a great day. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Yeah, appreciate it, James.
Bye.